the first quarter of 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced school closures in 194 countries and disrupted the schooling of over 1.5 billion learners, or 90.1% of the global student population. In the Philippines, such school closures have affected 28.4 million people, or 28.4 million learners, almost half of whom are attending primary school. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced people to think about how they will actually allow their kids to continue schooling. So for many reasons, these families are now faced with a huge decision on how to help their kids or how to let their kids continue with their education. Some families have opted to stick with their current education provider, while there are also others who have shifted to homeschooling. Today, we are discussing the homeschooling option. Hello everyone, I am Frances Joy Cordon Navarro, or Mommy Happy of Teach My Child, an online multi-platform dedicated to helping children maximize their potential. We are then very honored to have with us our distinguished panel of homeschooling experts to help us walk through the factors to consider before, during, and after homeschooling. Ms. Felichi Pangilinan-Buizon is a familiar face to many of us. Aside from her talent in singing, composing songs, and writing columns for CBN Asia and the Philippine-Canadian Inquirer, she has also been co-hosting CBN Asia's The 700 Club since 2005. Preferring to be called Parents in Progress, Ms. Felichi and her husband, Dr. Jojo Buizon, have been willingly sharing their expertise or their experiences in parenting. She has also been a homeschooling parent since 1996, and she's a certified teacher of the U.S. curriculum Sing, Spell, Read, and Write program. Ms. Gina Roldan is a homeschooling nanay of 4, a support resource dedicated to serving and equipping homeschooling families using the Charlotte Mason method. She is also the directress of Living Learning Homeschool, a homeschool provider catering to families using the Charlotte Mason method. And my aunt, Tita Irene Lanuza-Candelaria, served as a preschool teacher at the Philippine Montessori Center for 2 years and a parent coach for 5 years. She has homeschooled her 3 kids for 10 years with CFA, or the Catholic Filipino Academy Homeschool. Her eldest and second child are now senior high school students in Ateneo High School, and her youngest, so she's now back homeschooling her youngest child with CFA Homeschool. She is also the training and development specialist for CFA. So without further ado, let's discuss the factors that parents need to consider before homeschooling. Miss Felichi, Miss Felichi, what is homeschooling po, and how is it different from the loose usage of the term parents used to describe how they are homeschooling their kids?
Maybe I should start with what I thought homeschooling was.
Okay.
I thought it was bringing school at home. Okay, so my concept of school. But later on, I realized that it wasn't. Okay, I realized certain things, certain factors. It's parent-led, which means it's the parent who is the facilitator of the learning, right? And the parent is free to choose or select a teacher-friendly curriculum. I'm saying teacher-friendly because it has to suit the needs of the family. Okay, so or whatever the style of teaching the mother has, or the father, or whoever will be the main teacher. And it may be home-based, but it is not homebound, which means you do the learning at home, but you can also go outside because your world is the classroom. Okay, so I would also say that you don't recreate school at home. You know, you don't have to have blackboard desks and look at it, that it'll look like a classroom. No, actually it's all about creating a life that provides an education. Okay, so homeschool is really making learning a lifestyle. That's what homeschool is.
Okay. Miss Felici, question. So, di ba pag papasok yung mga bata sa school, gigising ng maaga, ganyan. So, pag sa homeschooling ba, what time do the kids usually wake up?
Okay. It depends on the season of the kid. Like many children, young children, wake up early, because that's really the routine that they have. And science or studies have shown that children learn best in the morning, okay, but
Wow.
not too early in the morning, okay, because there's also studies that show that children naman who wake up too early, it will be detrimental to their health, okay. So mostly most learning for children happen in the morning, right? But like I said, different families, different needs, different seasons. Okay, so it really depends. But ideally, yes, they wake up and they have a schedule, they have a routine to follow. But it really depends nga on the needs of the home. Kasi they have older learners who sometimes wake up later, but they actually stay up all night doing, studying as well. So iba-iba teacher.
I think ma-enjoy ng mga bata, no? Yung hindi na sila kailangan gumising ng sobrang aga. Ayun, so mas ma-enjoy nilang pag-aaral. Ayun. Tita Irene, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're back homeschooling. What are the reasons that parents have, or why do they opt to homeschool their kids?
Well, kasi there are so many pros in homeschooling. Happy. Firstly, the family benefits from homeschooling in terms of cohesiveness and increased time together. Parents are able to, spend time interacting, teaching, sharing, and nurturing their children, unlike if they are in the regular school. There's a saying that when the family prays, works, and studies together, they grow in closeness and purpose.
Hmm.
And also, because I was a teacher before, I was able to realize that there's nothing compared to a one-on-one instruction. Before, when I was teaching, we had 18 students, no maximum of 20 students per class, and there were two teachers. But even then, I still felt that I was shortchanging the children. I wanted to teach more, but since there are only two teachers, you cannot give more because there's also a limited time, and also in terms of the ratio, no, of the teacher and the child, it's still limited. So with homeschooling, uh, there's one-to-one instruction, no, and there's also more flexibility. You know, when the child is a fast learner, you can advance according to the pace of the child. But if the child is quite slow in a specific subject, you can, take your time. So those are the top two benefits that, when I hear homeschooling parents, share the reasons why, it's more of a custom made or tailor made education, um, family bonding, up to now, my son, who is already in grade 8, still hug me in front of his classmates, no? So ganun ka-close yung relationship ng mga ng parents with their children who are homeschooled.
Thank you, Tita. Tita,
So
question po. Do you have any experience with parents homeschooling kids with special needs? Because I can only imagine, di ba? Parang when kids have certain needs, it's quite
mhm.
hard for the parents to send their kids to school because they fear that their child may be bullied. So is it
Yeah, you're
possible
right.
to homeschool a child with special needs?
Yes. I shared with you that I was a parent coach for CFA Homeschool for 5 years. And one of the families whom I handled had an autistic child. They are actually based in Singapore. And the reason why they homeschooled is because their only son, is autistic. And the father, is very intellectual. He is an IT top executive in Singapore, and he was a graduate of Science High School. No, but he realized that not even good schools in Singapore can really address the needs of his child. That's why. Um, they got this curriculum from CFA, and then we guided them know how they should implement that curriculum according to the pace of their child, because he is autistic, no, it's so hard for him to focus. So the father is the one who is more hands on. He's the teacher actually of that
Mm.
the son. And I was just quite surprised na in the beginning he was so feeling at a loss, but eventually when he was able to uh, find his way, how to adapt to the learning style of his son, which is more kinesthetic. He is more kinesthetic, like he likes to walk, to jump. Now he's able to adapt that, and he really enjoyed, yeah,
Mm.
homeschooling. Both of them, the father and son, really started to enjoy homeschooling. So for me personally, the families who have kids who are, yeah, who have special needs, homeschooling is really the most ideal for them.
Mm. You mentioned, Tita, that it is the father homeschooling the child. That's
Yes.
very refreshing to hear, because it's usually the mom
Yeah.
worrying, how do I homeschool my child, or how do I teach my child in the first place? So if one parent is homeschooling, what is the other parent's role?
Okay. uh the usual scenario is the mom is the one homeschooling, but there are also dads who homeschool because the moms are the ones who are working full time, no. In the case of the dad I mentioned to you, who is based in Singapore, because he is running this IT company, he's based at home,
Hmm.
so he has more time compared to his wife who is working in the office in Singapore. So basically, if that's the setup, the dad is the teacher, and maybe when the mom gets home, he's the one who teaches other subjects like maybe arts or Christian living
I
or
see. So
other
when
subjects
two
like that.
parents are homeschooling,
Yeah,
I mean,
both of them
kanya-kanya
can share
subjects.
in the responsibility. Yes, they can divide the subjects. No, uh, whichever is whichever subject the parent feels more confident in teaching, then they can do that.
Okay. Let's talk about costs. So I mean, it's the COVID-19 pandemic has really affected everyone from regardless of where they source their livelihood. So for full-time
Mhm.
workers or full-time earners, many have lost their jobs, and for the business owners, business has been really bad. So I'm wondering, what are the costs related in homeschooling? Is it cheaper as compared to traditional school?
Happy, actually, it depends on the track that you want to get into in homeschooling. For those who are planning to homeschool independently, without a homeschool provider, that's a more practical track to go to, because you don't have to spend in the homeschool provider, the learning fees and all that. Compared to a homeschool provider, uh, average cost would be from 15,000 to 60,000 to be able to enroll in a homeschool provider. So it really depends on the family. Uh, the common perception, is it really cheaper, but again, it depends on the family, because there are families who, aside from the academics, they focus on the extracurricular.
Hmm.
So, yeah, for example, in our family's case, we enrolled in a Catholic provider, and then we also homeschool. We also enrolled them in music, karate.
Mhm.
So when you add up all the costs, it's like it's equal to a private school tuition, or even more expensive.
I see. Miss Felici, Miss Gina, I'm just wondering. So, what are the qualifications that are needed, or what are the expectations from parents who can homeschool their kids? Is there a requirement that they have to be a teacher or something?
Well, legally, the homeschool parent or the one facilitating, the main facilitator, ought to be a college graduate. And so, therefore, all homeschool providers require this to be able to enroll with a homeschool provider. But there are parents who are also not college graduates, and there is always a way to work around it. Some go independent route if they are not able to homeschool to enroll with a provider. But in any case, the point here is that the parents are able, that they are passionate about how their children are learning. And for me, that will blossom and it will bear fruit.
Mhm.
Can I also add that during the time that I homeschooled, which was in the 90s, okay, I could only count in my hand who were homeschooling. So I was a bit scared, and but I started to research. And during that time, homeschooling was already big in the West, okay? And to my amazement, there were studies that showed that many of the homeschoolers would outscore their private school counterparts in tests. And it also showed in the study that it was not dependent on the educational attainment of the parent. Actually, most of them were not even high school graduates. You see,
Oh, that's
and
nice to hear.
when I learned that, I said I shouldn't be too scared. I said because I graduated from college, so I said maybe I can wing this. I was actually thinking that way. It gave me a little bit more confidence. So Gina is right. We are the ones who know our kids the most. Therefore, when we teach them, we know kung makukuha nila, kung ma-enjoy nila, kung
Mhm.
magugustuhan nila because the passion is there.
Mhm. Are there any seminars or workshops on how parents or newbie parents can homeschool their kids?
There's a lot. There's a lot.
Okay.
There's so many internationally, locally. Resources are so many. And the thing here really, the question is the desire of the parent and the willingness and the dedication. I think for me,
Hmm.
those are the key things.
Okay. Kasi I understand you, but some parents, they feel na, oh my gosh, I don't have the patience. But as you said, Miss Gina, what's important is the desire of the parent to teach their child.
And of
Ayun.
course, there's discipline then on the part of the parent because the truth is, we are still parents. There's
Mhm.
still drama at home. But the children are
Yeah.
not the ones growing, but we, Miss Felici and Miss Irene, grew also because of homeschooling
Yes.
children. So it's a journey talaga eh. It's a different
Okay.
mindset altogether. So,
Mhm.
Parent
Um,
has to have a learner mindset.
yes.
Pick up.
okay. So just a question. So one parent has to teach, the other will be working. Can single parents also be homeschooling their kids?
Who wants to answer that?
Um, okay.
Irene.
I'll answer for most of the parents whom I handled as a parent coach. I handled yeah, some single moms who worked as a virtual assistant. So their work was based at home. That's why they were able to do it while yeah, while their son is maybe during that time, because mostly the virtual assistant work is mid yeah, night shift. That's why they can still teach the child during the daytime.
That's great.
It's actually more challenging, no, to do it, but with conviction they were able to do it.
Okay.
I think
So,
happy.
sorry. Yes, po.
Just want to add that I think it's important also to sort of inform them that homeschooling is also a success when you have community. So even if she's a single parent and she's not really alone, because she she can make a choice to be part of a community, and when you're part of a community, that's when you start experiencing the moral support, or yung kulang mo meron ng isang nanay, and you kind of
Yeah.
like help each other, and it becomes a journey that you travel together. So
Yeah,
that's
it's so
very important.
And Miss Felici, I've heard
So
about
true. It takes
co-op
a village
to raise a
to raise a
child.
child.
Opo. Ayun. Miss Felici, you mentioned the community. How easy is it for a newbie homeschooling parent to find a group of homeschooling parents who can guide her, who share the same values?
I think it depends again on what track she will choose. You know, if she goes with a homeschool provider, like I think Gina would have more to say about this. They provide they provide community. So there are she gets to meet the other parents. She gets to meet the other homeschooling families. You know, so eventually there you will be able to find someone that you can sort of like become your ano traveling partner, di ba? We
Mhm.
always you pray for a mentor, you pray for someone who can also walk with you through this. So it's not hard because there are other people who have the same concerns and needs like you.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned two tracks, Miss Felici. What are the two tracks that parents can take?
Dalawa lang ba?
or
I guess
or
you were
dagdagan
referring
natin
to
Miss Felici yung third. Sige po.
yeah, yung going independent or linking up with a homeschool provider. I mean, that's the basic tracks that you can go to.
And
Uh,
sorry.
Go ahead, Gina. Go ahead, Gina.
I've experienced both tracks. I was independent prior to becoming a homeschool provider. I was independent all throughout, and but my desire for a community was there. I needed moms to connect with, and so I think it's all also up to the parents. If you want to reach out in their Facebook group, Homeschoolers of the Philippines, that's where I met most of my friends. You somehow nagkikita-kita kayo. So as an independent homeschooler, I experienced a community. Now with a provider, I more community. It's
Okay.
really up to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So, for example, you want to make a choice whether you're going to go independent or you're going to link up with a homeschool provider. When you're independent, you have more freedom. You can choose when to start and when to end. Okay, and you can choose whatever curriculum you want. You can make it eclectic, which means you use different from different sources, or you can choose a particular one. So you have a lot of freedom when you're independent. I would suggest this for those who are teaching preschoolers and the early years, because ang characteristic kasi ng preschoolers is fun and flow. It's like you just kind of like enjoy teaching your children at that season. So you wouldn't want to be pressured with deadlines. You wouldn't want to be pressured with certain strict requirements or whatever. So I would suggest that to go independent. Well, that's what Donna and I did. Okay, so and then at a certain time, you want it to be more structured. You have more discipline, more you want a more how do you call this, reliable schedule. So you link up now with a homeschool provider. But the homeschool provider also offers a lot of benefits. They do your record keeping. They give you, you could ask advice from them regarding what you're learning. So there are many things that you can gain. And one of the important ones is you link up with an accredited homeschool provider. Okay, because the accredited homeschool provider will be able to give you a learning reference number. Okay, in the Philippines, the Department of Education assigns a learning reference number to every student, okay, so that they will be part of the list. Kumbaga, they'll be registered. No? So if you're independent, you don't have that. So you need to link up with an accredited provider to be able to get a learning reference number. Now, since like I told you, we were independent, our route was we had to take a test. It's the placement test, the Philippine Educational Placement Test, which is the PPT test, yeah, which is given by the Department of Education. This placement test will determine what level you are at, okay? And then you will be given a learning reference number once you take that test. And then you can already enroll in regular schools after that.
Okay.
So pag nag-homeschool provider ka, hindi ka na magpe-PEP test, hindi ka na magpe-placement test kasi they'll be able to provide you now with that learning reference number. So anytime you want to go back to or you want to go to traditional school, your records are in place, the requirements that are going to be asked for you, the homeschool provider will help you put that all together para masubmit mo.
Okay.
So those are the options.
So parang mas organized or at least meron na kaagad structure pag may homeschool provider. And then, pero pag preschool, pwedeng go with the flow, independent ka. Ang question ko po is, what about those kids na from traditional schools and then COVID-19, they're not so sure whether their current education provider can immediately provide the necessary curriculum that's suitable for a home-based learning environment. And their kids are no longer in preschool. So, paano po yun, Ms. Felichi? Do they now go with a homeschool provider or okay pa din po mag-independent?
Wait, you're talking about children in regular school that will go into homeschool?
Yes po.
Okay, so like my son, okay, because he was in a regular school and we decided to homeschool him. So when we pulled him out, we decided to link up with a homeschool provider. Okay, so because he's grade 10, so 11 and 12 kasi, those are the crucial years, right before college, So we decided to link up with a homeschool provider. In this case, it's Homeschool Global in the Philippines. And then now in terms of your question is...
for those beyond their preschool, and then they came from a regular school, with which track should they go? Homeschool provider or independent?
That depends on, like for me, I would prefer to go to a homeschool provider because I wouldn't want my son to take a PEPT test anymore. So that his senior high is parang, that's already, I want to leave that to, that's already fixed and so it really depends on the family. If they want to go independent, they can still go independent, but they will have to take that PEPT test at the end of the year.
Got it. Siguro ako, my baby, I still have a 2-year-old little girl, not yet ready to enter school. Pero baka pag 3 years old, I might try your suggestion, independent, and then homeschool provider. Ayun po. Now question is, do I have to choose a homeschool provider that's near my place of residence or kahit malayo, that's fine? Sino po pwede sumagot?
Yeah, okay. Happy, the beauty about homeschooling is you can be in any part of the world. So you don't have to be getting the homeschool provider near you. But well, that will be an additional factor. Bonus na lang yon if, for example, the provider you got is really near your residence. But it doesn't really matter so much because as to your activities naman, you seldom go to the office of the homeschool provider. Usually, they just require you to go to the office for the documents and all that. Or if they have extracurricular activities based in that center where your kids enroll in, then accessibility is important. But if you are based abroad, it doesn't really matter. So in the case of CFA, more than 50% of the enrollees are either based in Middle East, Singapore, or other parts of Asia. So that's the reality. You can homeschool anywhere.
Okay, so another question. So I'm thinking for parents, diba, na because of COVID-19, they have decided, at least for now, to stop their kids' education. Parang for safety and economic considerations. Yun yung so far napapansin ko sa mga parents po namin sa learning center. Can they, after listening to you discuss about the beauty of homeschooling, can they change their mind and still enroll their kids in a homeschool? Pwede
Definitely.
po. Anytime. Pwede po.
Time, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely anytime.
That's good to hear para at least pwede pang mag-change ng mind yung mga nag-decide na stop na sila po. Ayun. Okay, so going into the preparations for homeschooling. Miss Felici, ano yung tingin niyo po na dapat ihanda ng parents in their homes? Like what kind of study space should they have?
Okay. I think what's important first is to identify your team. Okay, the team, that will be involved, so that everybody's on the same page. You were saying a while ago, if the mother is teaching, what's the father's role? Actually, moral support is very, very important. That's why many times, when I talk to, let's say, young people who are considering it, I would always say you both have to be in this together, because it really, really helps if the husband and the wife are both gung ho, or both, both agree to homeschool. That's one. Because homeschooling, because there will be days when you don't feel like homeschooling, and diba? Look, Gina is nodding her head, because it's really true, so you need to identify your team. So if you have, let's say, if you have a babysitter or a nanny, kasama sa team yan, diba? And if there are older siblings, kasama rin sa team yan, okay? So everyone needs to be, kumbaga, in the same page. Okay, now in terms of preparing the physical space, depends again on the age of your child. Like kami, we used to do our together activities. Like when they would do projects, they would do it all together kahit iba-ibang levels sila. We just treated it differently in terms of the questions to answer, and it was kasi multi-level, diba? So they all did it in the dining table, when we had together activities. But when they had to do their own, they just would whisk off wherever, like in their own rooms or whatever, like that. So you don't necessarily have to have a dedicated space, but it helps. It helps to have a dedicated space. But for me, kasi learning happens in all the rooms, okay? In the kitchen, in the laundry, in the garage, all of the places are learning places there.
Okay.
So of course it has to be a place with good lighting, that your chairs have to be appropriate. So
Ayun.
those are considerations that you should have.
I think that's
Baka,
also very refreshing. Sorry po.
yeah, baka Mommy
Mm.
Irene and Gina have other things to add. Go ahead.
It's okay. You answered most of what was in my mind also.
Well, I just like to add that, yes, you don't need a dedicated space. In fact, nag-evolve ang aking homeschool space from the dining to another. When the kids were growing up, hindi na kami kasya because in the States, we were from the States, we just had a small apartment and sanay kami sa living room or sa dining room. When we came back here and, for some reason, hindi conducive sa dining room, yung master's bedroom namin, biggest room, and I said, you know what? I don't need the big master's bed. I converted it into a school room, and we slept in a smaller room. So, you have to be creative. You have to work with what you have. You don't need to spend so much. You look around your place and make do with what you have.
Siguro I would recommend, like, at least have a world map or a globe. I mean, those are things that you'll use a lot. If you don't have a whiteboard, I always say, if you have a big glass window, just put tape Manila paper behind it, and you can use, you know, wet, what do you call it, whiteboard marker, and to make it a whiteboard, or the back of calendars. So there are ways and means, to be able to get the learning materials, your teaching materials within the home.
I think that's very refreshing for a lot of parents kasi 'di ba parang nowadays, you see on Facebook, parang pagandahan ng study space. Parang nakaka-pressure for some parents na, oh my gosh, I don't have a study table, I don't have space for even a desk, a dedicated space. So it's nice to hear that parents can, you know, relax. It's fine. You don't need the specific space. You can make do with what you have. Ayun. How about the child's mindset? Parang do they have to be conditioned in such a way that they will receive or accept learning from their parents, especially parents who are not teachers? Kasi some kids, I've noticed at least that some kids are more receptive to listening to their teacher as opposed to the parents. So sometimes the parents would ask the teacher, can you please say this to my son? Because he doesn't listen to me. So how do you do it?
If I may share, uh, happy because my eldest was in a progressive preschool before, in her junior kinder, and so I decided to homeschool her a year later. So what happened was I had to explain. I had to orient her, Therese, your mommy will be your teacher next year. So I had to do a lot of parang orientation and yeah, basically psyching her up that she will no longer go to that old school, but we will be studying at home. So I prepped her actually. It was quite parang uneasy during the first few weeks. Parang uh, I felt so parang awkward. Even if I was a former teacher, I felt so awkward in the first during our first week. But eventually, she got used to it that I was the one teaching, and everything went smooth. No, so parang she's already adjusted with that situation, particular setup at home.
Okay. I've heard that some parents, if they're not so confident in teaching their kids, they actually get a tutor. So for the subjects that the parents are not confident teaching their kids. So I'm just wondering, is there a difference in the child's reception or attention to the parent homeschooling as against the tutor? Or wala naman po?
Hence, kasi, a lot about teaching is about relationship. So, oftentimes, maybe the relationship is intentional, especially parent homeschooling, and a lot of adjustments. So I can't really see, I can't right now. Mas magaling yung okay pag teacher or okay pag parent. I think the key here is the relationship. Now, there are certain subjects that are hard to teach. Like, yun. So, yes, maybe there are teachers that specialize in some certain subjects, and they might be more efficient and more, but you can't really see that for all.
Okay. Um, so just another question with respect to kids transitioning from a regular school to homeschool.